Hello everyone, welcome to the very first session of our Math 1060 SRS sessions. In this video, I'll be discussing the first worksheet under graph sketching. So let's start with the first problem. Here what we have is, on separate axes, we have to sketch the graph of these functions. So now in the first two problems, you can see that they are in the format of y equals mx plus c. So when you have this format, that means it is a straight line and m represents the slope, c represents the intercept. So, and if you have a positive slope, the straight line will be like this, and if you have a negative slope, the straight line will be like this, right? So now in here, as it has a positive slope, you should have a graph like this, and since the intercept is at 2, the graph or the straight line should intersect the y-axis at 2. So the only possibility will be a straight line like this, and here you will get a slope of 3 and an intercept at positive 2. And for the second graph, you can see that if you write it in the format of y equals mx plus c, it will have a negative slope, right? Negative half. So therefore, it should have a shape of this nature, like this, right? And here again, you will have a positive intercept. So the graph should be of this alignment, and it should have a intersection at the y-axis at positive 1. So the only possibility for that to happen is a curve like this, and it should have an intercept at 1. And also keep in mind that when you are drawing the sketches, it's a good practice to name to label these axes x and y. Right, let's move on to the third problem. Here it is in the format of x squared plus something. So when you have an x squared term, then your graph should be either like this or it should be like this, right? How do we determine the correct one out of these two? If the coefficient in front of x squared is positive, then the graph should take this shape. And if the coefficient in front of x squared is negative, then the graph should take this shape. So in the most fundamental sense, the graph of x squared minus 4 should have this shape. But there are more details that we need to extract out from this given formula in order to draw the proper graph, right? One information that we need is the appropriate places of intersection, right? So basically now, since these are very simple formats, you can just equate this the function x squared minus 4 to 0 and solve for x. So here x will be equal to 2 or x will be equal to negative 2. That means the graph should be equal to 2 at these 2 points. In other words, the graph should have a y value equals to 2 at both x equals 2 as well as at x equals negative 2. And since it has a positive coefficient for the x squared term, you will eventually get a shape like this, right? And also you can see, if you substitute x equals 0 here, the y value will be equal to negative 4, right? So this is the way you should draw the graph of x squared minus 4. And for the fourth one, the only difference is that it has a negative coefficient for the x squared term, right? since it has a negative coefficient, the graph should look like this. The basic structure should be like this. And then if you solve the equation by equating the y values to 0, you can see that it will give you the values of x as 0 and positive 3. So putting all these things together, you can have a shape of this nature, right? So basically what we did here is that first we noticed that it has a x squared term, so we should get one out of these two shapes, and according to the positive or the negative nature of the coefficient, we determined what is the most appropriate shape for the given equation. And then by solving for 0, by solving for for the equation of fx equals to 0, we determine the appropriate x-axis intersections, and we just plot the shape of this curve. And when you do this calculus subject a little further, you will come across some more advanced techniques to determine the shape of a given equation in a very, even if it has a more complicated nature, even then we will be able to find the shape of that given curve by using some calculus techniques, and you will eventually learn those techniques within this syllabus. But just for the time being, we will use these simple methods to determine the shapes of these curves. And finally, if I move on to the last part of the question of this worksheet, we are to determine the strengths and weaknesses of these sketches, right? So you can see that in this first example, they have not mentioned, or in the sense they have not labeled the x and the y axis. Also, they have not labeled the x-axis intercept or even the y-axis intercept. So those are some weaknesses of this sketch, right? And for the strengths, you can say that the lines, the graph that they have drawn has a similar shape to the correct graph, right? Here you can see that we were required to draw the curve of fx equals 3x plus 2, and they have drawn a straight line that goes with the appropriate curve. But there are some more weaknesses for this sketch. And for the second problem, they have almost figured out the correct shape. Also, they have mentioned the x-axis and the y-axis intercept, which is a strength, but they have not labeled the y-axis. Also, there is one more thing. In the left edge, right? In the leftmost edge, there is a bent shape like this, which is not true when it comes to the actual graph. So this point will be a weakness, and also not labeling the y-axis is not good. So that marks the end of the worksheet 1.